the line into addiction?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't know where that line is. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and the reason that I'm a recovering alcoholic is that I couldn't find the line when I needed to.
Well, I think for me it was the point when I wanted to stop and I couldn't, and I'd find myself driving to the liquor store or my connection's house without any pre-cognizant idea of doing that. I just would be doing it and asking myself why at that time, and I think that's where I crossed the line, is when I couldn't personally stop myself.
Great, thank you. Okay, tell me, how do you know when you cross the line into addiction?
Crossing the line into addiction, I believe, gets to the point where you're not getting anything done, when you're out of money, when your friends are always there when you got drugs, and then when you hate yourself a little bit, and knowing that you just gotta change. Nightmares, completely drunk, always late for work. It's a sad life, and once you get out of it, stay out of it.
Well, there's some definite input on what addiction has meant to those three individuals. Did you see anything that was particularly meaningful to either one of you?
Well, the one thing that jumped out at me was the last gentleman that had said how it affects your work. Oftentimes that's what happens is with the disease, it's progressive. You know, you can start out on weekend parties or whatever, and then you find that you're doing it much more often. You know, and then you find that you can't stop on that Sunday night before you go back to work on Monday, and you find that it's continuously happening, and it starts affecting your work, your responsibilities, no longer able to pay your bills, and it can just change your life, as they said.
And in fact, you change as a result. And I know as the disease progresses, one of the characteristics is denial. And so frequently we can't see what people around us can see.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's true. And oftentimes, even when it is pointed out to the individual, they still can't see it. It takes a while for them to finally break that denial.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's never broken.
Okay. So part of, we were talking about withdrawal before we left from the break, and we talked about seizures. It would seem to me that one of the reasons people would begin to lessen their denial is when they find that they're having to use their drug to be able to function, to be able to go to work.
Just to feel normal to get up in the day.
Yeah, just to get up in the day.
Yeah. Go to work.
So is that frequently a time when people might come in and begin to seek some help?
Well, let's see. Treatment of addictions, usually because of the denial, even despite adverse consequences as a result of their drug or alcohol use, the person has to get in trouble before they come to us, and not unlike many other helping professions. Except in drug dependency and substance abuse treatment, they get in trouble with the law, they get in trouble psychiatrically, get in trouble medically, or they're coerced by some system, the family system, through an intervention process. So that generally they come to us in less than desirable therapeutic condition because they're in trouble.
Absolutely. In fact, we could probably see that reflected as we continue to look at our definition of addiction. So if we return back to our definition in our graphic, we could take a look and see what the next issue might be. That the substance is often taken in larger amounts or over a longer period of time than was intended. So you're not able to predict how much you will use after you start using. So my understanding of that, or interpretation of that, is that I can't predict it. I can tell you that I'm going to have a drink, and maybe I'll drink 4 or 5 or more. Or maybe I will just have one.
That's exactly right. There's a famous book, I can't remember the name of the author, but it says, "I'll quit tomorrow."
I'll quit
And
tomorrow.
tomorrow never comes because they cannot predict or are using over a longer period of time than intended.
And I'm sure each time I'm able to have just one, it reinforces my denial.
You're
that,
under
well, see, I
control.
couldn't be an alcoholic because, look, I only had 1 beer
Exactly.
this time.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see the next criteria. There is a persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control the substance. How do you see this played out with people you have worked with?
Well, trying to cut down, you know, that's going back to what I had said earlier, how they try to go back to just the weekend partying as opposed to the weeknights. You know, they'll start on a Thursday night, you know, as opposed to their Monday night or whatever.
Okay.
You know, so they try to maintain it and try to control it, but
Okay, so if I never have a drink until 4 o'clock, I couldn't be an alcoholic because all alcoholics drink in the morning. Is that an example?
that's some of the misconceptions, yes.
Okay, or I have a rule that I don't drink after 6 o'clock on Sunday because I have to go to work the next day. That might be another one. Don't people often, don't they also switch their choice of
Yes.
substances too?
Yes.
That-
Well, for instance, Rodine, the first gal that spoke on of your tape, was saying that she's a recovering alcoholic because she couldn't find any lines. You know, if she had the supply of the cocaine to do, she might very well be a recovering addict. You know,
Okay.
cocaine addict.
Okay.
They change to whatever they have. You know, like some people will start drinking Stoli's vodka, but then they end up drinking Safeway or Lucky's brand or whatever it may be.
Kind of like the character in The Lost Weekend who said, you know, I want whatever's cheapest.
Yeah, right.
Don't
And
give me anything
plenty of.
fancy. Absolutely,
Yes.
plenty of it. Okay. All right, so maybe somebody who says, well, I can't be an alcoholic because I don't drink whiskey anymore, I just drink wine, or I just drink beer. After all, that's not hard liquor. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, it's not like I drink hard liquor, I just drink beer.
Well, and that point number 5 under the diagnostic criteria of substance dependence, it manifests a lot as continued broken self-contracts.
Okay.
Trying to say, well, I'm going to go to this party, or I'm going to go by Jake the Fake's house, and I'm only going to have one drink or one line, and they can't, like what the third person who was sharing, you just can't help yourself. You find that you're using excessive amounts, and you rationalize away the need for a contract. Who needs a contract anyway?
Yeah.
And we have to understand one of the underpinnings of substance dependence is an obsessive compulsive predisposition. And the word obsession comes from the Latin word to be besieged. Almost you feel like you're taken over. You can't help yourself.
Yes, in fact, it may almost feel like an outside force is sort of
Yeah,
compelling
exactly.
me to do this.
But it's not outside, it's inside.
You bet.
Yes.
You bet. What's the next criteria? Let's take a look at that one. A great deal of time is spent on activities necessary to obtain the substance, use the substance, or recover from its effects. Okay, so we're talking about some real time commitment in terms of our lifestyle. You mentioned our lifestyle may be really changing to accommodate our drug of choice. And how does that look with people?
Well, there's a variety of things. Let's take Ray Milland's clip you showed. Many addicts, alcoholics state that the anticipation of the next episode of getting intoxicated is just as exciting as the actual ingestion of the drug. And you saw that in Ray Milland's expression when he was sitting on the chair. His
Yeah.
drink was in front of him, and he was just kind of salivated, getting
Yeah.
prepared to
You bet.
to ingest that. And that whole anticipatory stage is a lot of time spent on that.
Okay.
Dysfunctional addicts who are underskilled, have not have a lot of education, haven't worked really much in their lives. One of the reasons they can't is that they don't have time. For an example, in a heroin-addicted population, their weekly calendars are very filled and very busy because there's a lot of time and waiting to purchase your drugs, to find the money, to find a connection, and then you do your drugs, and then you have to be somewhere where the drugs are doing their effect, and then the drugs start to wear off, and then you got to start the whole scheduling again and finding the connection, pull a few burglaries, liquidate your assets with a fence, and
Okay.
you know, it's a very busy lifestyle. A lot of time spent.
A lot of time. There's not a lot of whole time for work there.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So.
We say that lovingly, too.
Of course.
We understand the nature of the beast.
And it is, you know, and once I would imagine that using that example with heroin addiction or other types of crack addiction, you're talking about a lifestyle shift, a cultural shift that happens, you know, and maybe that contributes to the myth that only people who come from lower socioeconomic classes have struggled with this, because part of that stereotype is, you know, I've had clients say to me, well, I can't be, who might use prescription medication. Well, I certainly can't be an addict because it's not like I stand out on the street corner or I have to go find somebody because my doctor writes the prescription, so it must be okay.
But it's interesting to note that from every practicing addict's perspective, there's always some other person they know who uses much more than they do.
Isn't that
they
amazing?
use as a barometer to indicate
Yes.
where they're at.
That's right, so I couldn't possibly have a problem because my friends are so much
That's how you
worse.
think I'm an addict, you should see this person.
That's right. Let's take a look at our next criteria. important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of substance use. So it sounds like it's somewhat related to what you were just talking about in terms of a lifestyle shift, that people are having to decline invitations to go places, maybe not showing up when they said they would, that sort of thing.
With the, for instance, in a marriage, if you're married to an alcoholic or what have you, oftentimes it gets to the point where you have to decline the invitations and such because your other half, your husband or your wife, whomever it is, may just get so intoxicated and so drunk that he makes a fool of himself, and you feel embarrassed, and so you start cutting back on the social things because you don't want people to see that, because because sometimes it can be embarrassing.
Okay. So then, from your perspective as an intake person, you get to hear from the families, you know, this is really affecting us, that we don't feel like we can, we feel just as closed in as maybe the alcoholic or addict themselves.
Oh, yes.
Because our lifestyle changes had to adjust. Let's look at the final criteria. The substance use is continued despite knowledge of having persistent consequences physically, psychologically, legally, or relationally that are likely to have been caused or worsened by the substance. So at that point, maybe you do have someone who comes in for treatment who is beginning to have those kinds of effects in all different areas of their lives. Their employers, their spouse is saying, no more, I'm tired of not being able to go places. Maybe there's a financial consequence. And what do people do at that point? Where do they go if they realize I have a problem?
Some people seek out their priest or a counselor, interventionist, a friend. People seek out different people depending upon where they come from culturally.
Okay.
Like the Hispanics oftentimes go to their priest or to their family member, to their father, their grandparent, or whomever it may be. Sometimes people go to their employer, employee assistance programs, and other people call our 24-hour helpline.
That's right. You do have a 24-hour helpline where people can call anytime and get referrals to local treatment centers. I know a lot of people also might go to their physician. Maybe their physician is saying, you know what, your health condition is as a consequence of drinking. Maybe someone's developing diabetes or gastrointestinal problems and that sort of thing.
Yes, but on our helpline, we are able to give them referrals to various treatment centers or support groups such as 12-step meetings or interventionists as well.
Okay. So people will, one of the arguments I hear about though is treatment's so expensive. I guess there is different types of treatment here in the county. For people who have coverage and insurance, there are choices. And maybe some different choices, but they're all available. People can go through the county if they maybe do not have the same kind of financial backing
that is correct.
that other people do.
And that's why it's important, Mary, if your viewing audience knows of an individual having some difficulties with substance abuse, alcoholism, for them to call our helpline at the National Council of Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. Because we're like a brokerage of a variety of resources in the community that we'll find several options to meet the specific financial and other needs of the caller.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being here. Join us next week as we ask the question, why is it so hard to manage our money? I'm Mary Crocker Cook, and this is Bay Area Psychology. Good night.